Here's what to do when you're anxious mid-conversation. Let's say you're speaking to someone, but you've kind of noticed that you're getting more and more anxious. Your heart rate increases, you're shaking a little bit more. Maybe you can't really control your legs. You can't really stop fidgeting and putting your hands all over the place. You're wondering where to put your hands. I'm going to talk about why this happens and a protocol that you can use when this happens, when you catch yourself, to kind of bring yourself back into the present moment and come back to the conversation. Then we're going to talk about how you can reduce the chances of this happening, how you can reduce your anxiousness and properly focus on the conversation. So why this happens, there's a multitude of different reasons, but the most common ones are because of habitual thoughts, possibly from parental trauma. So you probably have this anxiousness because you were taught to be extra cautious in your conversations growing up. If you said something wrong, maybe you were punished with an emotional explosion or some sort of silent treatment or some sort of love being taken away from you. It is this combination of insecurity with a tremendous fear of making mistakes. And if you're getting anxious mid-conversation, like while you're talking to that person, then you probably have anxious ambivalent attachment style, which comes about because of inconsistent parenting. So possibly maybe whoever you grew up with, your guardian, sometimes they will set some boundaries, they'll set some rules. But sometimes when you break those rules, they're completely fine with it, they're happy, they're cheerful, they treat you well anyway, they're like, hey, don't do that. But they are still smiling and they are still positive and energetic. But sometimes when you break those rules, then they explode violently, emotionally. The way they react is very volatile and it can go all over the place. Growing up, I'll have perfectly normal and healthy conversations with my dad, maybe in the car. And once I got back home, maybe I'll be showering or something like that. And in the shower, I'm happy. I'm beatboxing inside the shower at maximum volume. And then suddenly I hear my door getting slammed in. And he's telling me to shut up aggressively and it scares the living shit out of me. Like everything felt so happy and cheerful. And then suddenly it just... I'm just met with an emotional explosion and that causes me to shut down, It makes me feel so scared, my heart rate goes through the roof. And sometimes without even telling me what I did wrong, he would just give me the silent treatment and not speak to me for sometimes almost a week. That is what inconsistent treatment looks like, and it makes you very cautious because you're so afraid of overstepping any boundaries or possibly triggering any emotional reaction that takes love away from you. So now whenever you speak to someone, whenever you do anything, you are extra cautious. You have this incredible social anxiety. So here's the things you do that works in the middle of the conversation, where you start catching yourself, when you've realized that you're starting to get anxious and you don't know what to do because you feel it rising up, you feel the tension coming. That's what she said. When that happens, what you want to do is direct your attention to the other person. And that's easier said than done. This is very, very difficult because you'll find that even though you direct your attention to the other person, you are still shaking. You are still noticing that you are afraid. You are still feeling fearful. Look at how they are feeling. And then notice that they are actually not perfect themselves. They are actually not perfectly confident themselves. Notice that their posture is a little bit off. Notice that the way they speak isn't very fluent or something like that. Find a flaw in them. It sounds bad. But bear with me, it's actually really, really good because it kind of humanizes the conversation, whereby you are not performing to have this person that you're speaking to evaluate you, but both of you are evaluating each other. Don't forget that you are also a person in the conversation. So you want to start to look at the other person, you want to start to judge him, but it's just so you can help yourself cope with your fears, right? You don't actually think maliciously of this person at all unless they're actually a terrible person. So that's the first thing you try to do. You take the attention off of yourself. Next, you retard max. And what retard maxing is you let go of all social construct and you really let yourself go. Unless this is a very professional setting, if you're speaking to a friend or whoever, this is perfectly fine. I will speak to teachers like this sometimes even. So if I do start to feel anxious, I will let my autism come out. I will say random things. I will put my arms all over the place. The most common autism max skill I use is I just start to stretch obnoxiously and I will make like a sound all the time. Whenever I feel the anxiousness or the tension building up, I just do that to remind myself that I can be comfortable in whatever space I'm in, to remind myself that it isn't that deep. There's not much social evaluation going on here, and I don't have to perform perfectly for me to get the most amount of affection from the other person. When you allow yourself to autism max, you become much more comfortable. You feel an instant relief. You feel an instant kind of a drop in pressure in the surroundings around you, and you're able to be so much more present in that conversation. And because people see that you are willing to be comfortable around them, that enables them to be comfortable around you. So you gotta let go of how scary it is to autism max and just let yourself go. And then you legit just try it. The next time you speak to someone you trust in a conversation, just try autism max. When you feel annoyed or anything, or you feel any emotions rising up, you just and then you're fine. Trust. Just try it. And after your autism max, you take a deep breath into your belly. So you take the excuse to stretch and open up your posture. This is very, very powerful. It kind of opens up your breathing chain, so it kind of releases everything in it. Because you are breathing more smoothly with that better posture, with that more open posture, what this does is it lets your body and your mind know that you are not very claustrophobic and not under danger. Everything just feels much more comfortable. Because think about it, if your breath isn't moving perfectly well, it likely means you're under danger, or under pressure, or you're in some claustrophobic space. And your mind will start to resist that. So by just opening up your posture, doing like some sort of taking up a lot of space kind of move, you'll feel so much more comfortable in your own skin. You feel like you're allowed to do whatever you want. Lastly, you are probably incredibly afraid of making mistakes. And this fear of making mistakes is going to cost you so much in life. It's going to cost you so much opportunity. It's going to cost you so much relationships, so much happiness. So we really got to work on this fear of making mistakes. And we only do that by practicing and making it a habit to act before we think. And we can do that progressively. We can start small and slowly build it up. If you are risking making a mistake, but it's something that you can handle, take that risk. Just go for it so that you can build up that resilience. Being less afraid of making mistakes, being less afraid of being rejected is exactly how you beat life. This is a fundamental skill that will destroy your competition, because if you are less afraid of mistakes, you're more willing to seek for help, you're more willing to help people, so that makes you a better person overall. You'll be more willing to show up to places that you think people wouldn't welcome you in. The opportunities you'll capitalize on, the things you'll go after if you're not afraid of making mistakes, it's going to completely change your life for the better. But facing this fear of making mistakes, because it's been kind of conditioned into you, it's been ingrained into you, it's gonna take some time, especially when you have parents who like to take your responsibilities for you, parents who are incredibly paranoid, and whenever you do something that could potentially have a mistake, they react very emotionally towards it. So you have to kind of force yourself through that. You have to take up responsibilities without telling anyone and go and make the mistake yourself. You're a young adult anyway, you have to do this. You have to go and pick up those random things that could possibly fuck you up. You have to take those risks that you never took when you were a child, because you were kind of protected by your parents and they were paranoid about everything and you couldn't really try anything. You gotta take those risks without telling anyone. Find opportunities and learn to act before you think, before evaluating all the circumstances and being overly cautious of the potential consequences that could happen. Of course, you do this with some level of critical thinking, but you want to take those risks. You want there to be potential mistakes and you understand that, but you're gonna take the risk anyway. And after a while, you find that you develop judgment. You build your skills at decision making because you've never went and practiced it yourself. You've always hid in safety. That's why you have a huge fear of mistakes. But when you realize that you're actually capable of handling consequences when they do happen, when you realize that your judgment starts to improve and you're making less mistakes, even though you're taking more risks, then you'll be less afraid of making mistakes. And when you face that fear, when you've made this habitual practice to keep facing your fears, keep facing rejection, keep facing all these potential funny things that you were taught to be very paranoid of, you become so much better of a character. You'll be so much stronger as a person. You have so much more resilience. You have so much more mental capacity to handle things. You'll be so much more reliable. And in conversations, even though it's kind of unrelated, right? But because of that trust you've developed for yourself, because of that competence, because you know that you are somewhat competent in certain fields, by risking making those mistakes, you become a more holistic character who is more robust, more resilient to possible consequences, possible emotional volatility, or possible fuck-ups. You become so much more well put together as a person that this social anxiety, this anxiousness mid-conversation starts to fade away in of itself. But of course, it's still going to take time. And combined with that, as you face your fear of making mistakes more and more, you're also going to become a person with higher competency, which attracts more people who are similar to that, who have similar competency to you. And as you make more and more friends who are of a higher echelon, higher capability, you start to have more respect for yourself. And not only that, you pick up that secure attachment style from them. These more competent people that you've worked up to be friends with, they weren't born with the same kind of, paranoid parents, or maybe, whoa, I almost fucking died. They weren't born with the same paranoid parents or the fucking emotional, volatile, dangerous landscape growing up. And they have more secure attachment, which means they are more kind of comfortable in their own skin. They have more social confidence, they're less afraid of making mistakes. And when you surround yourself around them, you become more like them, and it becomes easier for you to detach from those, anxieties and chronic fears of making mistakes. By focusing on habitually reshifting how you think, reshifting how paranoid you are, how afraid you are of rejection and making mistakes, you have full circle developed yourself holistically, and you will improve your life in every way. And since we are people with imposter syndrome, since we are afraid of being narcissists, we need to develop real tangible competence in order for our social anxiety to go away, because we need to feel like we deserve to be the person we carry ourselves as. We can't just be confident, we can't just pretend to be confident, we can't listen to everybody else and fake it till we make it, because that's just not us. We will always doubt that, like, do I really deserve this confidence? Do I deserve to go after what I want? We have to earn that somehow. And we earn that by putting the effort to habitually reshift how we think. We earn that by building our competence in certain realms, whether it's getting more fit, getting better looking, learning how to build our mental capacity, working on our mental health through journal and meditation, whether it's learning a new skill, learning how to play the piano, having a field where you specialize in. It's going to do so much value. It's going to do so much for you because you found that you can provide value in some sort of way as well. And when people start reminding you that you're providing value, when people show appreciation for your competence or kind of praise you for how good you are at something, then your self-esteem also goes up, which sounds like external validation, which that's exactly what it is. But external validation is actually quite important because, how we value things is decided by what other people think anyway. And when we found out that there is some tangible existing proof that what we have done for other people is considered to be valuable, our level of competency is appreciated and seen, then that external validation helps us feel better about ourselves on the internal as well, because it reminds us that we are somebody capable of providing value. And if we put our mind to something, we know we can at least get better at it. Sure, we might not be the best, but we can at least get to a point where we can provide value. And just from knowing that we are in a position to be able to provide value if we want to boost our self-worth, then we will feel like we deserve more things. When you stop pretending to be someone else, when you start to face your fears of making mistakes, when you start to really relax in the conversation and let yourself be autistic and feel comfortable and understand that, what you think would make you risk rejection, what you think would make you lose affection, isn't necessarily going to do that to you. And when you've built competence by becoming a more holistically better person, more holistically well put together, with trust in his own capability and judgment, that's when everything starts to open up. That's when you become more comfortable around other people. So these are the areas that you really want to focus on. And let me tell you, if you do actually try, you've never actually tried anything, right? At this, if you do actually try, you will completely change your life and it'll be absolutely beautiful. And it's absolutely possible. And not only is it possible, once you start to click and actually try, it just moves so smoothly. You got this. I love you. It's better work.